The footage that was never supposed to exist. He said he wanted nothing more to do with the palace. Said he left it all behind. Duties, titles, even family. So why was Prince Harry caught sneaking back into Buckingham like a thief in the night? That's the question echoing through every corridor of royal commentary right now. And not just because it's Harry. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Not just because it's Buckingham Palace, but because the man who once declared war on royal secrecy may have been caught in one of the most secretive acts imaginable, captured on quiet, chilling footage that was never meant to see the light of day. Or so we thought. Let's take a breath. This isn't a tabloid frenzy. It's not palace gossip. This is something else entirely. It began, visibly at least, with the courtroom steps. Prince Harry's return to London to face off against associated newspapers was already enough to grab global headlines. The man once known as the Rogue Royal, stepping back onto British soil to accuse one of the most powerful media groups in the country of something deeply invasive, illegally gathering his private information. Voicemails, bank details, medical records. He came, he said, for justice. But it's what happened between the court hearings, in the silent hours between press briefings. That's begun to shake the very foundation of everything we thought we knew about the fractured relationship between the Duke of Sussex and his family. Because while Harry was battling the mail in court, someone inside the palace released something far more incendiary: internal surveillance footage. Footage that allegedly shows Prince Harry entering Buckingham Palace through a restricted side corridor, alone, after dark, without any visible security detail, less than 48 hours before his testimony. And to make matters worse, the leak didn't come from the press. It came from the palace. Authorized, we're told, at the highest level. Which means, either the king is weaponizing security footage against his own son, or someone in the royal machine is playing a much more dangerous game. Let's rewind. When Harry arrived back in London last week, it wasn't a triumphant return. There was no welcoming committee, no flag waving, no royal carriage waiting at the gates. He came in under the radar. Commercial flight, minimal entourage, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Not the behavior of a man seeking the spotlight. And yet, within 24 hours, every outlet from the Times to TMZ had a version of the story. The angry prince, the stone-faced barristers, the papers, the flashbulbs, the headlines. But while the world was watching him step through the front doors of the High Court, they missed what was happening behind the palaces. Somewhere, someone was preparing to shift the entire conversation. Let me ask you something. Why now? Why would King Charles, or anyone acting in his name, choose this precise moment to release a recording that calls into question everything Harry claims about his distance from royal life? Think about it. This wasn't a paparazzi photo taken from 400 feet away. This was internal, classified palace surveillance, silent, time-stamped, and, up until now, locked behind layers of clearance. And that unlock? That didn't just happen on a whim. There's something calculated here, something almost surgical. Because the footage didn't just show Harry walking through a side gate. It showed intent. His head was down, shoulders stiff. No interaction, no hesitation. He moved like someone who had done this before. Which raises another question. How did he get in? Access to Buckingham is tightly controlled. Keycard-only entry. Security rotation protocols. Multi-point clearance. Even former royals, especially those who've publicly stepped away from duties, don't just stroll in unannounced. So someone let him in, and someone else decided the world should see it. But why? Is it a warning? A message? A retaliation? Or something deeper, a reckoning? Let's not forget the context. Harry is currently suing one of Britain's most notorious media empires, accusing them of hacking, illegal surveillance, and weaponized privacy breaches. At the very same time, a video leaks, seemingly from his own family, documenting him doing exactly what he insists he's no longer a part of. The contradiction is brutal. On one hand, Harry, the victim of surveillance, standing in court seeking justice. On the other, Harry, caught in silent footage, slipping back into the system he says betrayed him. It's an emotional whiplash. And if it's affecting us this way, imagine what it's doing inside the royal family. Now here's where it gets even more complicated. According to insiders, and I use that term cautiously because in stories like these, everyone has a source, King Charles himself was briefed on the footage days before it surfaced. Briefed, not surprised, which implies one of two things. Either he authorized its release, or he was outmaneuvered by someone close to him. Both options are explosive, because if the king did approve it, it would mark an unprecedented escalation in the private war between father and son. But if he didn't, then we're dealing with a rogue operation from inside the palace. Someone with access, motive, and a very specific agenda. Either way, the public leak wasn't an accident. It was a shot across the bow. And what makes it all the more unnerving is what we don't see. The footage, at least the version made public, cuts off just as Harry disappears into a hallway leading deeper into the private wing. No context, no dialogue, no explanation, just a frame and a message. He came back. But came back for what? Reconciliation? Retrieval? Revenge? There's a theory circulating, and while it's still unconfirmed, it's gaining traction among palace watchers and legal analysts alike, that Harry's visit wasn't spontaneous, that it may have been a contingency move triggered by what he expected to happen during the trial. Something about the testimony, something about a sealed document. There are whispers about a file. A red folder seen in the king's hand during a closed-door chapel visit earlier that week. Photographed once, never again. And then there's the timing. A single, unannounced phone call from Buckingham to Kensington, just 4 seconds long, at 4:12 a.m. the morning after the footage was recorded. No one spoke. A silent line, almost like a signal, or a warning. And this is where things stop feeling like royal drama and start veering into something far more serious. Because the deeper we go, the more it looks like this isn't just a story about surveillance. It's about access, control, legacy, and trust shattered in every direction. If Harry really did sneak back into the palace, then everything he's built in exile, his brand, his independence, his legal crusades, it all begins to blur. But if the footage was selectively edited, strategically released, and emotionally weaponized, then we're not just watching a family fall apart. We're watching an institution fight to rewrite its own story. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. There's another piece of footage. Longer, unseen, still locked away, or maybe already in someone else's hands. And it's what's on that second tape that could decide everything. Because the version we've seen ends at the hallway. But what came next, what was waiting in the shadows, that's what changes everything. And no one saw it coming. He said he'd never step foot in the UK again. So what pulled him back and why now? There's a way people walk when they're trying not to be seen. It's not quite a slouch. It's a narrowing. The shoulders compress. The gaze drops just below the horizon. And every step has a kind of unnatural deliberateness, like each footfall is being negotiated rather than taken. That's how Prince Harry moved when he returned to London. Not as a prince, not even as a man coming home, but like someone who wasn't sure he still had the right to walk those streets at all. It wasn't supposed to happen. Not this soon. Not like this. Back in 2020, when he and Meghan stepped away from their royal duties, stepped back, as the palace had euphemistically phrased it, Harry's message had been clear. He was done. With the institution. With the press. With the restrictions, the protocols, the roles that had long felt more like chains than duties. And yet, just after dawn on a damp Monday morning, his car slipped through a side gate of Heathrow under light cloud cover. No flashing lights. No fanfare. Just tinted windows and a hired driver keeping to the left lane like any other. He was back. Why? That's what no one can quite explain. Yes, there was the lawsuit. Officially, Prince Harry had returned to appear at the High Court as part of his ongoing legal battle against Associated Newspapers, the publishing titan behind the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. His claim that they'd hacked into his private information for years. Phones, medical records, security logs, voicemails, all of it, if his legal team is to be believed, scraped and exploited for headlines. It's a case that's been building quietly, inch by inch, far from the royal pageantry. And Harry, by all accounts, wanted to see it through in person. That's the stated reason. The safe one. But let's not pretend the return was business as usual. Because it wasn't. The moment he touched down, everything shifted. Even the air around the story seemed heavier, charged with something that didn't feel like mere legal strategy. People watched him differently. Reporters called his appearance measured and focused. But behind that was something else. Something like strain. like he was carrying more than just briefing notes and press tension. It's not just that Harry returned. It's how he returned. That morning at the High Court, he walked up the steps flanked by his legal team. No family, no palace escort, no William, no Charles, just the team, just him. You could hear the shutters click. Hundreds of them. He didn't acknowledge the cameras. Not once. He wasn't performing. Not for them. But something about the silence felt louder than usual. In the days leading up to his testimony, there were murmurs, subtle at first, about whether this court case was part of a bigger personal reckoning, that it wasn't just about media intrusion, but about old wounds he couldn't close, not without confronting them. And then the footage leaked. Everything changed. But we're not there yet. Not quite. Because before that door opened and the footage surfaced, there was a build-up, a shift behind the scenes. And that's what you need to understand. That's the part everyone seems to be skipping past. Something was already in motion before the trial even began. Let's rewind 4 days. At Windsor, King Charles was seen in public at a garden charity event, smiling, shaking hands. But behind the scenes, according to a source within the security detail, there was movement, conversations in corners, an uptick in private correspondence, unusual, tightly controlled. The kind of logistical scrambling that only ever happens when someone unexpected is returning. Harry's team had reached out. They hadn't asked for a meeting, not directly, but they had requested informal access accommodations, which is a sanitized way of saying he wanted to get into certain places without the public knowing. Now that's where it gets murky, because even if you're a prince, even if you were once a working royal, access to royal properties isn't automatic anymore. Not since the security arrangements were stripped. Not since the decision was made to remove taxpayer-funded protection from Harry and Meghan. If you want back in, someone inside has to greenlight it. And someone did. The question is, who? Because it wasn't a secretary. It wasn't a liaison. It wasn't the usual route. Security logs show a level 3 override was issued 2 nights before Harry appeared in court. That's the kind of clearance usually reserved for urgent diplomatic entries or sovereign directives. And on the record, only 3 people in the entire royal infrastructure can approve that. The King, the Prince of Wales, or the Lord Chamberlain. Of those 3, only one had a documented meeting with palace security that week. The King. What was discussed? We don't know. The meeting lasted 47 minutes and concluded with a handwritten note passed to a courier. The note, we're told, has not been seen since. But several hours later, the internal system logged a gate override at Buckingham. The code used hadn't been activated in over a year. And that's what brings us back to Harry. Because sometime between dusk and midnight, a figure approached the West Wing side entrance of the palace, hooded, solitary, head bowed. The footage doesn't show his face. Not clearly. But the gait, the frame, the timing. It's him. And whether he knew he was being filmed or not, he kept going. Right through the gate. Now pause here. Because this is where 1,000 interpretations begin to spiral. Was it a sanctioned visit? A back-channel negotiation? Was he retrieving something? Leaving something behind? Or was it something darker? Let's not forget, this is a man who once accused the royal household of systemic neglect, who described their silence as complicity in his wife's suffering. And yet, here he is, back, alone, slipping through a door like it still belonged to him. So I have to ask, what changed? What moment? What detail? What secret made him come back? Because something pulled him here. And whatever it was, it didn't feel planned. Even Harry's closest advisors appeared caught off guard. One insider told us there was no mention, none, of a physical visit to the palace in the team's legal itinerary. No scheduled meetings. No security accompaniment. No briefings with court liaisons. Nothing. Which means this was either a detour or a mission. Now, here's where the contradictions pile up. If Harry's fight with the press is about privacy, about being observed without consent, then what do we make of this moment? A silent camera, a silent hallway, and a man walking directly into the heart of the very world he once denounced. Is it hypocrisy, desperation, or something else? There are some who believe this visit wasn't about Harry at all, that he wasn't retrieving, he was delivering. A file, a drive, a document. That what he carried with him into Buckingham, what he left behind, wasn't personal. It was leverage, evidence. Something too volatile to send by email. Too risky to trust to intermediaries. It sounds dramatic, I know. But when you start pulling at these threads, when you look at the timing, the silences, the reactions, you start to feel that we're missing the most important piece. Because the real story may not be what Harry did inside the palace. It might be what happened just before he went in. A 4-second phone call from an encrypted line. A change in the king's schedule. A red folder that vanished. And a hallway camera that, just after capturing Harry,